Propaganda and Dadaism represents two vastly different yet equally powerful responses to the turbulence of World War I and its aftermath. While propaganda harnessed the persuasive power of design to unify nations and drive collective action, Dadaism emerged as a rebellious counterpoint, rejecting traditional values and exposing the absurdity of war through radical artistic expression. Both movements demonstrate how art and design serve as reflections of cultural and political climates, shaping and changing societal norms. World War I propaganda was a masterclass in persuasion, using emotional imagery, bold typography, and direct messaging to rally public support and influence behavior on a massive scale. Governments and military organizations recognized the need to engage citizens visually and emotionally, leading to the creation of some of the most iconic and impactful posters in history. One of the most famous examples is Alfred Leit's 1914 poster, "Your Country Needs You," which features a stern-looking Lord Kitchener pointing directly at the viewer. This simple yet powerful design used direct eye contact and commanding language to instill a sense of duty and urgency among British citizens. Across the Atlantic, James Montgomery Flagg's 1917 "I Want You for the USA Army" poster echoed a similar visual strategy. The iconic figure of Uncle Sam pointing outward with authority reinforced the idea that enlistment was not just a duty but a personal responsibility. These posters were carefully designed to evoke strong emotional responses: patriotism, duty, and urgency. Their high contrast typography, patriotic color schemes, and use of authoritative figures worked together to guide the viewer's actions. Whether persuading people to enlist, buy war bonds, or conserve resources for the war effort, these designs were direct, visually striking, and highly effective at shaping public perception and behavior. Beyond recruitment, propaganda was also used to vilify the enemy, strengthen national unity, and justify wartime sacrifices. Posters depicted enemy forces as monstrous and inhumane, fueling nationalistic sentiment and reinforcing the idea that fighting was a moral obligation. In contrast to the structured, persuasive nature of propaganda, Dadaism emerged as a direct rejection of the rationality and logic that many believed had led to the devastation of the war. Originating in Zurich during the war and spreading across Europe and the United States, Dadaists embraced absurdity, satire, and fragmentation to challenge conventional artistic and political norms. Their work was deliberately chaotic, nonsensical, and confrontational, seeking to dismantle the very systems that had driven the world into conflict. One of the most influential Dada artists was Hannah Husch, who used photomontage as a tool for critique. Her work, Cut with the Kitchen Knife, is a chaotic collage of political figures, mechanical imagery, and cultural icons reflecting the fractured state of post-war Germany. Through this juxtaposition, Husch exposed the contradictions and failures of the political system while highlighting the absurdity of the world left in the wake of the war. Her approach to design questioned the traditional hierarchy of fine art, embracing a more spontaneous, thought-provoking form of visual communication. John Hartfield took Dada principles further, using photomontage as a form of protest against the rising fascism in Germany. His striking anti-Nazi posters and publications employed biting satire and provocative imagery to criticize Hitler's regime and expose propaganda tactics. By cutting and assembling elements from mass media, Hartfield subverted traditional design techniques to create compelling political statements that resonated with the public and challenged those in power. Dadaism wasn't just about visual rebellion, it was deeply philosophical. The movement questioned whether art could or should serve a higher purpose beyond aesthetic beauty. Dadaists rejected the idea that art should conform to established norms or serve commercial or political interests. Instead, they embraced spontaneity, nonsense, and destructive acts of creative resistance, producing work that often felt more like an anarchic statement than a traditional piece of design. Typography also played a crucial role in both propaganda and Dadaism, shaping how messages were communicated and perceived. Propaganda posters relied on clarity, boldness, and the impact to ensure their messages were easily understood at a glance. The high-contrast letter forms of Furman Didot's typefaces were particularly influential, offering elegance and authority while reinforcing themes of national pride and duty. The typography in wartime propaganda was designed to be unmistakable. On the other hand, Dadaists deliberately broke the rules of typography to disrupt readability and force audiences to engage with their work in unexpected ways. They used overlapping text, irregular spacing, drawing contrasts, and collaged letter forms to reject traditional typesetting conventions. In doing so, they transformed typography into a rebellious expressive tool, one that challenged expectations rather than reinforcing them. This experimental approach to type was a rejection of propaganda's clarity and control, reinforcing the Dadaist belief that logic and order had failed society. Both World War I propaganda and Dadaism revealed the dual role of design, to persuade and to provoke. While propaganda sought to unify and mobilize populations through carefully crafted visuals and messaging, Dadaism shattered expectations and questioned the very foundations of society through experimental and often subversive means. Each movement, in its own way, pushed the boundaries of design, forcing audiences to consider the power of visual communication in shaping thoughts, behaviors, and societal structures. The influence of these movements can still be seen in contemporary design. Propaganda's techniques live on in advertising, political campaigns, and branding, where clear messaging, emotional appeals, and strong visuals are used to shape public perception and consumer behavior. Meanwhile, Dadaism's legacy is visible in experimental typography, street art, and protest design, reminding us that art and design can be a tool for resistance and change. These historical lessons continue to be relevant today, showing us that design is not just about aesthetics, it's about influence, emotion, and challenging the status quo. Whether used to inspire action or question authority, the legacy of these movements proves that design has power to shape the world that we live in.